Washington at New England. Now, for me, I've been targeting Washington as a matchup for wide receivers for quarterbacks basically all year because they can't cover anyone. But now we've got New England who basically don't have a quarterback or a wide receiver that I want to touch. So are you touching this one, or is this a matchup that you're avoiding?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously we've lost Kendrick Bourne, who is ACL injury. Devontae Parker, I believe, is in concussion protocol, maybe. I might have got that wrong. But if he can't play, you're really talking Juju Smith-Schuster, who looks entirely washed, like to the point where it's incredible how much the Patriots moved on from Jacoby Myers, gave Juju Smith-Schuster a virtually identical contract, and they have got by far the worst player. Demario Douglas at 4K is going to be popular this week simply because the Patriots have consistently hyped him up, talked him up all through training camp. He seems to have done well. They've used him at points ahead of Kayshon Boutte, and it just seems like he is the player who is going to be on the field more. Realistically, you can probably lean towards Hunter Henry or Mike Gesicki if you're looking for a one-off. I think both of them probably see slightly more volume than they've seen at times this year. But for me, the interesting side of this is just the Washington side. We've seen Sam Howell, he's quarterback 11. He's very boom or bust occasionally. He's not a quarterback that I'd want to build a franchise around. But in fantasy, it's working. Jahan Dotson finally had a breakout game. He hadn't managed a single performance over 50 receiving yards, and then he had 108 last year, as well as his second touchdown of the season. 27 DraftKings points. That was more than double what he'd had in any other game. And the one thing that you can see on screen there, New England ranked 29th versus wide receiver twos. So they're top 5 against wide receiver ones. And this one just sets up for Jahan Dotson again. It also sets up for Logan Thomas because the Patriots rank 31st against tight ends in DVOA. They give up 7.7 yards per target to the position, which is 9th most. Logan Thomas, he's had that kind of target share right around 20%, hovering between sort of 17 to 20, averages 5.7 targets per game, which is the 10th highest rate among tight ends. So I think you can play him. You can play Dotson. If you want to double stack them with Sam Howell, I don't mind it. I'm not sure I can quite get there on a slate with Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts myself, but yeah. And then if you want to run it back with Demario Douglas, that's probably the most interesting one, but I wouldn't feel like you necessarily had to put any Patriots on a stack on DFS this weekend.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Now, I'm going to completely hijack the show, and we're going to disappear into a little dynasty corner that I want to pick your brains on, Tom. Sam Howell is grossly overvalued in dynasty right now. Okay, Washington is a tire fire. We have seen them trade away 2 potential, very good defensive ends. I think they're going to bring in a new head coach next year. I think they're going to have a new offensive coordinator next year. I think Josh Harris is basically going to rip this franchise up and build it from the ground up. This is a guy that was heavily involved in the process for basketball fans out there. I don't think Sam Howell is going to be the starting quarterback for Washington next year. Yet I keep I've put out a couple of tweets the last few weeks about quarterbacks that I think have got a starting spot, quarterbacks that potentially could be out of contract and stuff like that. And everyone keeps telling me that Sam Howell's a stud and Sam Howell's got that dog in him and he's going to be great. Yeah, Sam Howell's really useful and really good for fantasy right now. He's a high-end QB2. He's great. We always knew he was going to be great for fantasy if he could keep the job. But I don't think I've seen enough from Sam Howell to buy into him long-term as a dynasty asset. So I've seen talks of people paying a first for Sam Howell right now. That seems absolutely wild. Please tell me you're with me and you're kind of out on Sam Howell as a long-term asset, or do you think that he's a player that could potentially have some value beyond this season?
I think what it comes back to for me is one very simple question. If you've spent over $6 billion on a sports team, are you really going to have Sam Howell be your quarterback of the future? And I think Ron Rivera has no time whatsoever. If Ron Rivera makes it through January with a job, I'll be absolutely flabbergasted. And I think that the team, if you're going to tear things down, if you're going to start accruing assets, then in my mind, they're already priming themselves ready to be able to make a move up the draft board to be able to go and get a quarterback. And I don't think Sam Howell is a bad player. I think Sam Howell has shown enough that he can play in this league for a number of years, be a backup, be one of these kind of players who was in and out of the lineup. But I haven't seen enough for me to have massive confidence in him, and definitely not the kind of level of confidence where I would go out and trade for him in Dynasty. I got Dynasty leagues where I lost Kirk Cousins this week, and I would rather go out and trade for Baker Mayfield as a 1-year rental than push my chips in on a first-round pick for Sam Howell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just comes back to me. There's a new head coach in Washington next year. For that, I'm sure. And I just can't see a world where a head coach is willing to tie his future and bet on Sam Howell as the long-term franchise quarterback. So, yeah, I think grossly overvalued. And I think if you can get a first for Sam Howell now, absolutely snatch that right up.